Welcome to episode 116 of the Charm City Birdwatch podcast. This is take 3, and we're off and rolling, and we're not going to stop this time. I've got Ian here with me this week. We've had some technical issues in the past couple weeks, but we are all back and set now, I think. Had a couple false starts before we started recording here, but I think we're all set. We do have a lot to talk about, and we're going to start with the Orioles, particularly Ryan Mountcastle, because there's a lot to celebrate there. But after Orioles, we have plenty of Ravens stuff to get into. The Earl Thomas situation is at the forefront right now. Happened yesterday on Friday, and now we're here on Saturday, and there's more developments. So this is looking like it's turning into something pretty big, pretty significant. I'm sure we're going to have a lot to say there, but let's not waste any more time. Let's start with some good news, and that is Ryan Mountcastle finally making his Major League debut last night after I don't know how many frustrating games watching Dwight Smith Jr. try to play left field. I'm going to throw it to Ian right off the bat here because we missed you a couple weeks ago on the podcast where I was talking a lot about Mountcastle. Just wanted to get your take, like how frustrated were you during these weeks where we seemingly passed that threshold for service time and Mountcastle still wasn't up here? What was going through your head? How frustrated were you? Did you think he was going to come up soon? Where were you at?
I mean, obviously I was extremely frustrated. I've been pounding the table for this guy to be up long before now. I understand how service time works. It's one of the many things about the major leagues that I can't stand. But when all of these top prospects are starting to get called up, you know, the number 1, the number 2 prospect in baseball on bad teams, they're not worried about starting the clock anymore, which would mean that the clock is not an issue anymore. So I couldn't understand for the life of me why Ryan Mountcastle's sitting on the sidelines picking his ass. I mean, there's no reason that guy shouldn't be in the lineup every day. You know, if he has some struggles, maybe you sit him down for some days and help him through it, but you're not going to know what you have in the guy until you see him against major league pitching. It's one thing to be player of the year in AAA, and you know he's got the big billing. He's supposed to be a big time hitter in this lineup for years to come, and you have to see what you have in him. This is the perfect year to do that. The Orioles sit at 12-14. They're starting to go the wrong way. There's no reason he shouldn't be up. There's no reason he shouldn't be getting consistent playing time. And I'm happy to see that he finally got here last night, and I expect to see him in the lineup pretty consistently moving forward. But I was not happy about it, obviously. I don't think anybody was. Just tired of seeing Chris Davis every day, or Chris Davis pinch hitting. Like, he can't hit regularly, and we're still trying to pinch hit him. I don't know. I think Hyde's been pretty solid overall, and I really like him. But there have been some head-scratching decisions. I'm not sure how much he had to say about when Mountcastle was coming up, but I'm happy he's here, and I hope to keep seeing him in the lineup every day.
Well, he did make his debut last night, took 2 walks, surprisingly enough, and that was one of the knocks against him in the minors was the fact that he didn't take enough walks. He was striking out too much. If there was, besides his defense, if there was one thing you could hold over him, that was it. And in his debut last night, first plate appearance, he took a walk. The pitcher at the time, he was all over the place, wasn't giving him anything near the zone, so not that surprising. But I don't know how many pitches were in that bat. I would say it was probably like 7 or 8 at least. So just, you know, it's good to see him go up there for his first at-bat and not look nervous, not look outmatched. He's up there, he's battling, he's competitive, and at the end he gets a good result, gets on base. So besides Ryan Mountcastle debuting, which was one of the few good things to talk about surrounding the Orioles, there's been just a wave of bad. And I think the general consensus here is, 6-game losing streak. They suck again. I think that's clear. This is worse than the Marlins series, which was just like the offense disappeared for a little bit, but the pitching was still there. And then they immediately bounced back after that 4 games. Now this is 6 games. The bats are cold again. You got 2 big contributors on the IL. Just the pitching's starting to falter a little bit. Some bullpen arms aren't as consistent anymore. Starters still not going deep. A lot to dive into here, but for me, the big thing was Iglesias and Hayes heading to the IL. Nothing you can do about either situation, just unfortunate. Austin Hayes, to his credit, took one of the ribs and played for like a week after that. And I guess it got to a point where it was too painful. So you put him on the IL. Surprising enough, they think that 10 days on the IL is going to be just enough for him. Like, that's not an injury that's going to bother him down the road. I don't know exactly. I'm not a doctor. I don't know how broken ribs work, but, credit to him for playing through that. But, that's the type of player he is. He's a competitor. He just wants to play every day. And Iglesias is just unfortunate because he was a hitting machine. Even with the quad injury, he was still hitting well. A guy that they were probably looking to DH a lot, but it's just something that flared up on him too much. And I guess the debate came down to, do you commit to sitting him for 10 days or do you keep playing him, but you got to sit him like every other day to give him a rest day?
Yeah, it's not good to lose contributors like Iglesias. I mean, especially his bat has been unbelievable for this team. I wonder, and I don't know this, I wanted to look it up before and I didn't get a chance to, what's their record with him in the lineup versus without him in the lineup? I imagine it'd be quite telling. I'm not sure that it would be quite telling over the course of 162 games, but he's proven to be an important player for this group. Sucks to see Hayes hurt again. He's struggled so much to stay healthy coming up in the minors. It's kind of put a big dent in his career, and see him get hurt again is not ideal. But like you were saying before I lost you, I mean, they're not very good, and that's that. We think we all kind of saw this coming. I thought they'd hit. I feel like they've still hit pretty well consistently. Now they've had some clunkers here and there. Last night, 5 runs on 8 hits, but 3 of them came in the last 2 innings. They're still putting runs on the board. They're still hitting. They can't pitch. I don't think it's any secret right now. Alex Cobb's pitching pretty well and has all year. They've gotten decent starts from Tommy Malone. Everybody else has been pretty bad. There's a token Wade LeBlanc start you can find, and Wojo's had some decent ones, but these guys aren't very good pitchers. They don't have – a lot of them don't have major league stuff. They're more just get me over arms, soft throwers that pitch to contact, and it just hasn't worked out for the pitching staff lately. I hope they can figure it out because I do think this team can hit enough to keep them relatively competitive. I thought they'd win between 17 and 22 games. They've already won 12. That seems like a good sign. Now, that doesn't mean they can't have a stretch here where they lose 18 out of 20 and they're at 15 wins in mid to late September. I don't think that's impossible. So I hope they figure it out. It was fun when they were winning and they kept coming back on people and they were hitting home runs and everybody was hitting 350 and 290 and things were really going well. But I think we all kind of felt it was fool's gold and didn't want it to be. So to see it kind of rear its ugly head here lately has been difficult.
Yeah, definitely concerned about the pitching as a whole. I think I was saying it last week when I was by myself. I said, you got to get these starters to go deep. And it's situational every time where Hyde has been pulling the guys early. But there's been some instances where I thought he was just way too quick pulling these guys. And the explanation might have been that we're still ramping them up. I don't know. I just let these guys go. I don't want to sound like an old curmudgeon, but what happened to the days of starting pitchers, throwing 120 pitches or more, and there's no injury concern.
Sometimes it was like in back-to-back days.
Right. I mean, that's absurd. I think we can all agree that would probably lead to more injuries, but I don't know what happened over the years where, I probably sound like a stupid old curmudgeon, but it's annoying seeing a guy like Alex Cobb or even Tommy Malone or one of these other guys, LeBlanc, who's pitched a lot in the majors, get pulled around 70-some pitches when they're actually performing well. Because these guys have been in the league for so long, they know how to handle pitch counts. Like, they know where their body's at. They've been in the league for, in the case of Cobb, a decade or more. Let them go.
Because they don't have arms that typically get deep, they're always using their bullpen earlier than they need to, not because of reasons that you're saying, like a quick hook or they don't want to work a guy too hard. I mean, how many times are they, down 5-0, they can't get out of the second inning? It happens way more often than it should. So if somebody's rolling, I'm with you. Like, let them keep pitching. Try to give your bullpen a rest. And I also look at it this way, and this might not be the right way to look at it, but this is just the way my brain works. How many of these guys in the rotation right now project to be here in 2 years? One?
John Means, yeah.
I mean, and especially to still be in the rotation. Now, there's a chance that, Thomas Eshelman might stick in the bullpen or something silly like that. But, other than John Means, none of these guys will probably start a game for the Orioles in 2022. So to me, like, I want to get as much as I can out of these arms, because if there are bullpen arms that are starting to get overworked, I don't want that to be the case. So we'll see what happens, but they've definitely been kind of a roller coaster ride all year. It seems like we're at the bottom of the hill again, and I hope there's another climb. I thought the Red Sox coming into town this weekend would help them. The Red Sox haven't pitched well all year, and the Orioles have hit well pretty consistently. Still chances to right that wrong. I mean, they could win the next two against the Red Sox, and they'll be 14-14. And I mean, if I said after 28 games the Orioles would be 14-14, you'd probably take that.
I think a lot of this stems from the pitching, like we were saying. It's a never-ending cycle with the pitchers not going deep, and then the bullpen's getting taxed. But the hitting, I mean, they might still be putting up decent run totals. Like last night they put up 5, but the hitting has gone from just like, momentum hitting, I guess, if you want to call it, or like just good situational hitting, like, to a point where they're just getting like a guy on base however they can, and then the next guy up wants to hit a home run because they can't chain hits together anymore.
Well, and look at it seems like they're really struggling with guys in scoring position, and that wasn't the case earlier this season either.
Yeah, that's a big concern. They've stranded a bunch of guys. They just can't get them home. And the only way they're scoring runs anymore is if Santander's at the plate and you got a guy on base, you hope he hits a home run or something, or a double at least. Maybe Severino, he's still hitting home runs. But other than that, it's just there's no real offense and there's no consistent hitting. And Iglesias and Hayes are part of the equation there. Not having them hurts. You got Mountcastle now. Hopefully he adds a little bit of a spark. But Hanser Alberto, I mean, he's not only is he not getting as many hits, but I'm seeing an uptick in strikeouts too. And that's a guy that doesn't strike out much at all.
And Nunez has gone cold. It's all kind of just hit at the same time, right? I mean, the pitching hasn't been as good as it was for the first 10 games of the season as it's been in the last 15 games of the season. Mm-hmm. So I think that plays a role as well.
Big takeaway, though, they're 12-14, still got 2 games left, like you said, against the Red Sox. Could pretty easily split this series. As bad as they've played, the Red Sox pitching is just atrocious. They could definitely take these next 2 games. That would get them back to 500, and I did not check the standings this morning, but I believe going into last night's game, they would have been the prospective 9 seed. So they're still right there. I mean, you get back to 500, 14-14. This season's just a complete mess at this point. We got another coronavirus situation going on with the Mets. But if we do make it to the postseason and we get through these 60 games, the Orioles are still in it here. We're approaching the end of August. If they're not in the playoffs, they're not far out. They're only like a game behind a playoff spot. I still, like, as bad as they've been playing, I still don't think the dream of a playoff spot is lost. I just think that's how absurd the season has been, is that a team like the Orioles will go through a stretch like this and still be in the hunt for the playoffs.
I can't say that it's been lost, but it's slipping away a little bit. Listen, I'll put it to you this way. They're watchable. And for parts of the last 3 seasons, they really haven't been very watchable. There hasn't been much personality, much excitement with this group, players to look forward to seeing. It's kind of just been the who's who in the zoo of random players and man, these guys are terrible. We still watch because we care and we're fans, but this group at least has been fun to watch through 16 games or 26 games. I know they haven't all been great, but I'm with you. I think, I want to see them be competitive. I'd love to see them finish around 500. I think that would be a very nice year for a team that most people didn't see winning. I mean, remember the ESPN article at the start of the season? I mean, they didn't have this team winning 10 games. They potentially had them starting out like 0-16. So to see them kind of at least put a respectable product on the field most of the time has been refreshing for me.
Yeah, I would agree. And I'm not going to be like devastated if they don't make the playoffs, obviously, but I think also with the way they've changed the playoff format, how it's, the top 2 teams from every division get a bid, and then you determine your 7 and 8 seed as the best remaining record. The way they're determining it has changed. So I think the Orioles are actually really close. They're not in it, obviously, after another loss, but they are not that far off. It's a really weird way to determine the postseason, but it's 2020, and I think at this point we can all agree that nothing about this season is normal, and there's going to be a huge asterisk next to whoever wins, just because like you did have expanded playoffs and it was only 60 games and all this COVID stuff happened. We don't even know if every team's going to play 60 games. So if the Orioles make it in, who cares? Like we're just going to have a party here in Baltimore about it because we weren't supposed to be competitive. So any sort of success that we see, I'm with you. It's going to be a party here. All right, let's jump ahead to some Ravens right now. We have quite a bit to get into here, but the big news right now is obviously Earl Thomas getting into a scuffle with Chuck Clark at practice on Friday. Everything we know right now is that they got into an argument. Sources are saying that Chuck Clark got on him about Earl blowing a coverage or something like that, got into an argument. Apparently a punch or punches were thrown by Earl, maybe both, and then I think Chuck Clark left practice at that point. Earl Thomas has been sent home apparently. He wasn't at practice today. And then I think Chuck Clark was scheduled to talk to the media after practice yesterday. They replaced him with someone else, I think Miles Boykin. So at the time yesterday, there's a lot to get into here, but at the time yesterday, I was willing to kind of brush this off. We hear about camp scuffles all the time, but now as time has progressed and we get here to Saturday and we hear that Earl isn't at practice today, there's also some reports coming from some other media members that are saying that there's much more to this story and that there's some sort of internal conflict going on, and the Earl's teammates don't particularly like him. That's one of the big reports right now, and they want him out or something of that nature. So, Ian, how are you processing all this? It's certainly coming as a surprise to me. Like I said, I was willing to brush it off yesterday, but now that we get here to Saturday, we have more developments. There's clearly something more here.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like this is something that is going to just get brushed under the rug. I don't think it's just typical boys being boys training camp stuff. I don't see any reason why reporters, whether people respect them or not, would fabricate this story or make this a bigger deal than it is. It's definitely a big deal. Doesn't mean it's not salvageable. Doesn't mean I think the Ravens should cut Earl Thomas and that's the end of it. I'm not a hard line in the sand kind of person. I will say, and if those of you who listen to the podcast, I'm not the biggest Earl Thomas fan in general. I wasn't a fan in Seattle. He ran his mouth all the time there. He flipped off his coach on the way off the field when he got hurt in Seattle. Flipped off. He could say it wasn't his teammates. He could say it was to the ownership or to the coach, but there's nothing that said they had to give him a contract extension. Yeah, you should do right by your guys, but that kind of behavior wasn't something I was excited to have in Baltimore. You remember he ran his mouth last year about how he was going to stop all the big plays, and the Chiefs torched us the next week. He was talking about whoever the Ravens play in the Super Bowl, they're going to need to be ready or something like that as well. So I've kind of just grown a little bit tired of him in general. As far as the scuffle itself, if players are willing to say, and again, all you can do is go off of what you hear, that they want Elliott to get more reps, that's concerning to me. Thomas is a veteran. He's an all-pro. He's, should have earned the respect of some of the guys on the team. And it seems like for them to be advocating, and if they truly are, for somebody who's played 40 snaps in the NFL in 3 years, I can't see how you can brush this off as not a big deal. I understand people don't want it to be a big deal. They want, this to work itself out and Earl to still be here, and I'm with them. I don't want him gone by any means, but this is a much bigger deal than it looked originally. It's not just training camp being training camp. And the more willing that people are to take this seriously, I think the better. Not sure how it's going to turn out. I'm sure we're going to learn more in the next 24 to 48 hours. I obviously hope he's here and he's starting week 1 and everybody's on the same page. But Ravens have been in the news a good bit this offseason, and it hasn't been for the best reasons.
So it's definitely unusual because it's not often that you see a scuffle between two players on the same side of the field, two offensive players or two defensive players. It's usually matchup scuffles, wide receiver versus cornerback, lineman versus lineman, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a good point, too. It's not usually two guys that patrol the same defensive backfield. It's not like it's a D lineman and a corner. Like, that might be a little bit of, more of okay, but these are guys that are part of the same position group.
Mm-hmm. So for Chuck Clark which we all know Chuck is regarded by his teammates and now the fan base, it's well known that he's the smartest guy on the field from a football standpoint.
And Earl Thomas has said that.
Right. So, if he's blowing up on you about a blown coverage, you probably screwed up. I think that's a safe bet.
Right. And I like to see that from Clark, that he's not like kissing the ring, so to speak, for Earl Thomas to, that Earl's not above criticism, but it feels like Earl doesn't like to hear that. Which is kind of that diva mentality that I think he developed in Seattle, and he's kind of always played with a chip on his shoulder and had some swagger, but sometimes people don't take to that very well. And I think Chuck Clark is somebody who's kind of earned his way every step of the way. Maybe he wasn't as athletically gifted, and he feels like Thomas is kind of just coasting on his laurels a little bit.
Could be. At the end of the day, like I said, my ears are perked up here. Like, I'm definitely interested in what's happening, but I'm still not sold if we're getting all the facts here. We obviously don't know what was said. We just know the general idea that Clark wasn't happy with a play. They got into it. We don't know what was said, like, verbatim. So I'm not insinuating that somebody was over the line one way or the other, but we don't have the full story. We just have like a general outline. It's not good that, Clark couldn't finish practice yesterday and had to leave, and then Earl isn't there today. And it isn't nice that we have these reports of, internal conflict and whatnot. And it being, from what I've seen, not just on the field stuff. Like, there seems to be some, according to the reports, frustration that Earl isn't giving it his all in like team meetings. He doesn't seem particularly interested in stuff like that. I don't know. I think that if I was a teammate, that would certainly rub me the wrong way. A veteran like that who's, been around the league, won the Super Bowl, to just not care in team meetings. I think I would definitely understand the frustration. But at the end of the day here, I just don't see the benefit in cutting him or parting with him right now, not just from a financial standpoint. We already know that's an issue. Some people have presented that he has some sort of clause in his contract that could allow you to get out of it. I'm not buying that. I know the clause exists, but I don't know if the Ravens could technically use that here.
Well, and how much is he going to push back on that if they do try to use that? I think that would be quite a process as well.
So overall, I'm just kind of ignoring the financial aspect because I think we can all agree that is an albatross, and it's going to be an issue no matter what they do. I'm looking at strictly his performance and what he brings to the team. I don't care if you don't like Earl. This is a message to the fans, and this is a message to his teammates, and it probably sounds really stupid coming from me, who I've never played a snap of football in my life, to tell these Ravens players, professional players, how they should feel about their teammate. Because, again, I don't know what he's like in the building. I don't know what it's like to play with Earl Thomas. He might be the biggest asshole in the world. I don't know. But I can tell you that not having Earl Thomas on this Ravens defense is a net negative. There's no other way to spin it. You can't.
That doesn't need any spinning. There's no doubt.
I've loved Deshaun Elliott. I liked him coming out of college. I have wanted to see him just get consistent snaps here, and it's so unfortunate that the injuries have stood in his way. Hopefully I'm looking forward to seeing more of him this year, finally just being healthy. But he is nowhere close to as proven as Earl, and he's just nowhere close to being reliable in general.
And they're not entirely deep at that position either. Like, Elliott's nice depth to have if he stays healthy, but not much behind him.
Mm-hmm. You don't have anybody. And this is the other thing. I don't want to name names, but I've seen prominent media figures float this out there that the Ravens players not only want Deshaun Elliott to get more snaps, but are they're comfortable with the guys they have in-house, and they're saying that they would be comfortable going to free agency and bringing Tony Jefferson back. And again, that is coming from a blue check mark, not some fan account. I know it sounds like something a fan account would say. That's coming from a reporter. That's just absurd to me. It would have to be really, really, really bad for me to part ways with Earl Thomas. I don't know what he would have to do as far as on the field stuff. We know what it would take off the field to get him out of here. That's pretty obvious in today's NFL. But on the field, I don't know what it would take for them to part with Earl Thomas right now, because he's too good.
Yeah, there has to be, if it's salvageable, obviously you want them to salvage it. National reporter Tom Pelissero is now reporting the Ravens asked Thomas to stay home. They don't know for how long, but the thought is keeping him away from the building now is the right move. So I'll be honest, that's obviously very concerning as well. You also don't have to like everyone that you play with, but there has to be some sort of respect, and there has to be a ton of accountability on the football field. This is cliche, but New England has this saying, is do your job. Don't worry about my job, worry about your job. And a lot of football is that camaraderie. I've got to count on the fact that if you're supposed to play cover 2, you're going to play cover 2. You're not going to try, to play a different coverage or go on a read and leave me hanging out to dry. I think that is the biggest piece of this, is if you lose that trust with the teammates and the teammates really have a hard time trusting you, whether or not they like you doesn't matter. I think, that's the key takeaway for me, is if the trust is gone and they don't believe you're going to do what they expect you to do, that could make them look bad. And in turn, that's not the kind of infighting you want to have. I mean, if guys want to get feisty and they want to play hard and they want to go at each other, I'm all for that. But it sounds like this is kind of past that point. I hope that it hasn't. Like you said, I think the main takeaway is there's no spinning that Earl Thomas not being a part of the Ravens is a bad thing for the Ravens. I think it's pretty understandable.
Where does John Harbaugh factor into this? Because one of the first things that came to my mind was the Super Bowl season, 2012. There was a big media blow-up surrounding, I think it was following the Texans game before the bye week. This became a big deal. There was a so-called mutiny going on. Veterans in the locker room weren't happy that Harbaugh had them out there practicing. Right after that Texans loss, they thought they were going to start early on the bye week. As we know now, everything was settled. We don't know the specifics of that situation still, but after the fact, we heard from Harbaugh, heard from some players. I think the only person that's still bitter about it is Bernard Pollard. Everyone else seems to think it was no big deal. This situation kind of reminded me of that. You have a little infighting, some internal conflict going on. Probably not always the biggest deal, but, this situation certainly has perked our interest. Where do we think Harbaugh factors in? Do we think this is something where him being a veteran coach, he can step in and sort this out? To me, it seems, I don't want to say simple, but if you can just get to a point like what Ian was saying, where you don't have to like each other, but if you can just work together.
Yeah, I mean, Harbaugh's got to come out and he's got to say something here. I don't think that's expecting too much. I don't think he's going to tell you too much anyways, but I do think he needs to get out in front of this and at least give the fans a little bit of a better understanding of what occurred and kind of why, each decision was made. Like I said, I don't fully expect you're going to get that. But I do remember the mutiny that you're talking about, and apparently that was kind of used as a launching point and a turning point for that season. But you did see some of those players go eventually. A lot of people have always said it's Harbaugh's way or the highway. And to be honest, I've never had a problem with that. I think a lot of people have. He's the coach of the team. It's his way goes. And if you want to rock the boat and you want to cause dissension in the ranks of his team, and he thinks it's the best decision to remove the pain that you're causing him, then I guess I can get on board with it. But I do think that you need to hear from the head coach here, whether it's going to be everything you want to hear and you're going to get the full story. I would firmly doubt it. But I certainly hope that there's some plans for him to say something today, at least to explain kind of a little bit of what's going on.
This next big thing here, Dez Bryant. I don't know. Is it a big thing? Is it not? I really don't know. I just feel like after all the Antonio Brown stuff we went through, we finally seemingly got past that, and now all of a sudden we've got Dez Bryant rumors. And, to be fair, there is more validity to the Dez Bryant thing because he actually came in for a workout. So at that point, it's worth talking about because the Ravens clearly had some interest. But he came to Baltimore, he had a workout, left without a deal, not that surprising. The big debate here is, do you want Dez Bryant or do you not? To me, the fact is he hasn't played since 2017, his last year with the Cowboys. Put up pretty decent numbers in that final season with the Cowboys. It's not like he was phased out of the league because of poor performance, but he hasn't played in a couple of years. That's just a fact. I think there's room for a veteran in this wide receiver room, but I don't think Dez is that guy for me. I just think the gap between playing time is too big. I don't know if he's NFL ready anymore. There could be room for another guy, but for the most part, I've been saying this all last year through the offseason. You know me, I like this wide receiver group. They've made more additions in the draft this year. I want to see these guys get more reps, particularly Miles Boykin. He was a guy last year I said, if you throw him the ball, he's going to catch it. He had no catch concerns for me. He made some big-time plays when he did get reps last year. I say feed him more, get him more involved. I'm okay on Dez. Nothing against him, but I just don't need him.
Yeah, I loved Dez when he was in his prime 6 years ago. He's not in his prime anymore. He hasn't taken an NFL snap in almost 3 years. I just don't see what he gives them that they are in dire need of. I think that, like you said, I want to see the young guys play. I want to see Miles Boykin get 50, 60 targets. I want to see, Devin Duvernay get 35 to 50 targets. James Prochet, if he can make his way into the receiving group, get some targets. I want to see the Ravens become a more balanced offense this season. I think that's the main thing I'd like to see. Now, Lamar did throw for 36 touchdowns, and he led the league, and he had all these great passer rating stats, and that's all well and good. And he should be applauded for that. He had one of the best seasons I've ever seen in my entire life. Wow moment after wow moment. The Ravens need to get to a point where they can come back through the air. If they, go for an aggressive fourth down and they don't get it. If they, fumble the ball inside their own territory and find themselves down 10-0, 14-0 early. I want to see a more balanced passing attack. Dez Bryant, to me, another thing that people are completely ignoring, and it befuddles me, he worked out for the Browns 2 years ago, and they were desperate for wide receivers. John Dorsey was the GM at the time. They really wanted him. And they basically said, no, he's not even close. We have linebackers that are faster than him right now. I don't see what another year and a half and another injury would change about that. And it sounds like, you know how it goes with the Ravens. When you get these guys in to work out, if they like them, they don't let them leave. That they get the deal done that day and do what they have to do to get that player into the fray. I don't see that with Dez. To me, another thing, too, is it's totally different than Antonio Brown. Like, I think the Ravens need another established weapon to go with Hollywood Brown. Now, that doesn't mean I want them to ignore the youth. As I said, I'd like to see them get the youth involved, but adding a player like Dez Bryant doesn't give you that much. I feel like Antonio Brown would at least be, if he's on the field and his head's on straight, he's a stud. And I still think he can be a stud at this league or still be an above-average wide receiver. Dez Bryant is a nobody at this point, to be honest with you. So I think, for me, I love Dez. I've always liked him. I was a big Tony Romo apologist, and Dez was a huge part of those groups. So I think the right decision was made, hopefully, to kind of move on from him. But we'll see. I mean, they could kick the tires. They could have another wide receiver injury and end up needing him. So we'll see how it works itself out. But I'm with you. I'm not terribly interested in Dez.
And you mentioned that workout with the Browns a couple of years ago. Wasn't it around the same time that his name was being connected to the Ravens and he kind of blew him off? Sure.
Yeah, no, it was definitely something. He didn't want to play with Flacco was the main takeaway.
Okay. Well, that would make sense. That I was trying to think. That makes sense. Flacco was still the quarterback. Now we have Lamar. Last bit of Ravens news here, and this is unfortunate as well. Iman Marshall, rookie last year, he's going to miss the 2020 season. Got injured during practice early this week or last Sunday, I think. Just, came down wrong on his knee, tearing his ACL, I think. He is undergoing surgery, going to be out for the year, obviously. Drafted in the 4th round last year, placed on IR to start the season, ended up returning to practice later in the year, and he was eventually activated technically in November. So he was working with the team at one point last year, but he didn't see any playing time, maybe a little special teams. I can't remember if he was out there on special teams at all. But not a good sign right now. Just kind of a Deshaun Elliott type situation where, your rookie year is kind of marred by an injury. You try to come back, jumpstart things in year 2, and you're out for the year again. And this guy, they clearly like him. He's a 4th-round pick. So, I mean, say what you want. Even if he played this year, he was probably going to be a special teams guy just with the way the cornerback situation is. But moving forward, definitely a guy I think they wanted to groom and mold into a starting caliber cornerback, because who knows how much longer Jimmy Smith's going to be here. He's only here on a 1-year deal. I think Iman Marshall is a guy they drafted to step up in a year or two, and now that's being significantly hurt by this injury.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely never good to have a young guy miss what's going to be a second season, essentially. And to have his, knee problems and corners. I just get flashbacks to Lardarius Webb and when he started having knee problems, kind of how his game dissipated in front of our eyes. I don't think it's a huge deal for this year's team. I think looking forward to the future, I don't know if Marshall was a big plan for them, if he really played into the big picture, but him being hurt again definitely doesn't help his causes. It's tough to see a guy get, lose an entire season again after not really playing at all last year either. So it's not a good thing. I don't think it hurts the Ravens this season as much as some people are making it out to be, but it does leave them a little thinner than they probably expected to be at corner, and I'd like to see him kind of bounce back next year and get on the field. It's very similar to Deshaun Elliott, where you just haven't seen much or any of the player, and he's 2 years into his career. You end up hopeful every year that this is the year we're going to get something out of Deshaun Elliott. And listen, I like him too. Like you said, I don't think he's a poor player. I don't expect him to light the world on fire, but he was supposed to be a contributor, and I'd like to see him show that this year, and hopefully Marshall can stay healthy and show that next year as well.
I think that'll do it for episode 116. We got through it. A little hiccup here and there, but much better than the alternative. Appreciate you guys listening as always, and we will talk to you next week.